My name is Nathan Alexander Pratty. I go by Nate on a daily. And I'm first and foremost a painter. I'm an American. I'm born and raised in Rockville. And another important facet about me is I'm a man. That's something I feel very strongly about as well. I'm an American man painter. This one, and the tattoo. But I've got a couple other scars too. So this scar that you're talking about here, and then it's connected to the one on my ear, and there's also behind my ear, right here. And in a weird way, this tattoo is related to it. I got it when I was 16. I was in a gang fight. There was a dispute between, things get messy with gangs, it's not how people think of like colors and juice and shit like that from the 90s, but it's not really like that. It's more so a bunch of cliques, so I was already in this kind of second gen gang that was comprised of a bunch of other not even ex-gang members, just their gangs fell apart, my previous gang fell apart, and then we all kind of found each other. But we knew each other through this lineage where every gang has a leader or a G, right? My G was in prison, but he lived with, and he was a Crip, I was a Crip. And he lived with a Blood, and that's what I mean by it's not like in the movies where people think that just makes you inherent enemies. They lived together and they knew each other well, and his set was cool with our set, and they beefed with other Bloods and we beefed with other Crips. And my set was called Slug Set. It was still Loken, unconditional grimy gangsters all day. And I was Crazy Loc, so CRAZY LOC. It was 418. I still remember it all. You go to there were meetings, and you go to these meetings, you had to remember a book, you had to remember an alphabet, you had to remember a bunch of questionnaires. And if you got something wrong, you got beaten, on the spot. And it was very important for you to know all these things. People took it very seriously, and there was a hierarchy. There was a whole, there were ways to get in, ways to get out, ways to up rank. So it was all very serious. People thought that this is what they were going to do if you were in it. And I was young, but it was still people of all ages. And anyway, the other guy that lived with the leader of my gang died kind of mysteriously. The police ruled it as a suicide, but they didn't find him with a gun. And the gun that they said was his suicide was found in another location. So it was very clear to all of us that he had been murdered, and when that happens, one of the easiest ways to take a whole gang down, and police do this, is they just go after the leader. Because if that guy goes down, everyone's just gonna kind of fall apart. And so that's what happened to this guy's gang, and a lot of his old members, the biggest crime you can commit in a gang is called set tripping. It's when you all of a sudden fly the colors of another gang, or all of a sudden you rep another gang. And a lot of his, whatever his set was, I don't even remember, a lot of them switched over to Latin Kings. And there were these Latin Kings around my school. I was with other ex-gang members from that guy who died set. My G was in jail, or prison really. But, so people were mad at this, and it was kind of you think there's not gonna be consequences for this just because the old brass is gone. So people were furious, and we all met up to fight, right? So we show up, they show up, they showed up with some weapons. I'm sure our side had some weapons too, but it wasn't a just on-site fight, right? We met in a tunnel by a pool near my house, and there was these people that were not in gangs that were trying to kind of referee the whole thing, and so they were all right, this is gonna be one-on-one fights. So we were doing some one-on-one fights, and it just got tedious and annoying. And it became obvious that once there's a lot of ground play, it's kind of an invitation for everyone to jump in, So eventually people did jump in. this resulted in like the weapons turning over from like the refs or whatever to everyone else, and this kind of broke out into a like larger, now more serious fight. And so everybody kind of ran once this happened. Everybody split. The people I came with ran, and they went to the right, and then I went to the left. So that was a big mistake, and I was never the best runner. Like and I had just been fighting for like a good 35 minutes. I was pretty tired. So these dudes were chasing me. They had bats, and I got to a point where I just turned around. I stopped running. I turned around and put my arms up, and I said, "What are you gonna do with those fucking bats?" And well, they hit me across the head once. That split through my cheek here, and then hit my ear, and I blacked out. The next thing I remember were my friends picking me up. It must have been very quick, because that was probably the only hit I took. If there were more hits, it would have been more evident, So they picked me up, and I was all fucked up, and we knew we couldn't go to the hospital. We were all still in high school, so like we had to come up with something. I was determined to try and walk this off, but this part of my ear was hanging off, So we went and picked up these girls. We switched cars. We came back to my parents' house. I tried to shower, change clothes, but it becomes like pretty evident when you're like throwing up in the shower, that you need to go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital, or I went to the hospital. We made up a bullshit story, and that same day, other members from our like kind of makeshift gang or ragtag game had also been hit. So like we got fucked up across the board that day, and the police came in. I was all like hooked up to all the, they got the scanners on your fingers, they got the things on your chest, and the police came in and they were like, well, the first thing they said was, "Oh, you got all fucked up today," and I was like, "Yeah, well, fuck you too," And they always had a bunch of bad info too. Like they thought I was in a different gang. They thought I was friends with people I wasn't friends with. And I always wanted to correct them, but that's also something you don't do. You don't like give info. So if they have bad info, you don't correct them. So they were like, "Look, if you don't want our help, like just say so and we'll leave." And I was like, "I don't want your help," and then they left. And then the kids who got me with the bat ended up in prison like within 3 weeks anyway, because we were kind of on this like warpath of fighting back, and but those kids ended up, I think one of them robbed a store and ended up in prison for like, back then when you're like 16, getting locked up for like 16 months is like forever, so that was like, I had to have my peace with not getting revenge. And then also there was like this contemplation afterwards of like, that was a really serious fight for no reason. Like I'm okay now, but that was still a bunch of stitches across here. They stitched my ear back on, and then stitches behind the back of my ear, and I still get a ringing in my ear today. Like every once in a while I'll hear like I don't know I forgot the medical term for it, but there's like when you hear it, and it gets louder. Sometimes it's worse than others. And sometimes it'll go a long time without having it happen, but then sometimes it happens, I really felt rage when I thought about this, that the consequences could have been so much worse for me, and that I wanted to inflict that kind of same seriousness back. And like, so I did my diligence of finding out names, finding out places, finding out even like schedules. Like I was pretty adamant about getting revenge, but I went to college. Like that. It really did come true of like the best revenge was just living better. That guy probably like works a shitty job and like, you know what I mean? Like it's that at some point I let it go. I think that was the last like real, well, I don't want to say last real fight, but that was the fight that kind of changed the idea of fighting for me. That like once you take that kind of serious of a, I mean, that could have been life changing, and I was like, none of this shit is worth it. Fighting over, you know, almost dying over stolen iPods and bullshit like that, you know, stuff that people don't even think about. I mean, I knew kids that killed other people over an ounce of marijuana. You know, like, how ridiculous is that, to throw your life away and to throw somebody else's away over like $300, and back then's money too. Like, what a joke. So it was a real turning point for me, with the kind of acknowledgement of how serious things could get, how pointless things were. And it's like, it's one thing to be nihilistic, it's another thing to like really throw it away for nothing. A poorly healed wound, you know, because it's the good wounds you don't see like that, you know, and good, it's not really a scar if you can't tell, you know, but a scar is like something that was poorly healed. Yeah.